Roland, my least favorite character as of yet. I've hardly done some testing with this guy before recording this, and I honestly feel so underwhelmed with his performance. He doesn't have a good variety of skill set, and his gameplay doesn't give him much freedom. So let's go and get this thing started if you want to know what I'm talking about and how to build him. The talent that he has increases his int after using a skill and taking action, recovers a fixed amount of HP. At the start of the battle, he gains a different form depending on his class type. So if his class is Holy, he gets Edge of Insight, which adds 10% of his int to his defense, and when initiating battle, before battle, dispels 2 enemies buff. In his Mage class, he gets Chastising Light. When using a skill, his range increases by 2. After actively attacking and dealing damage, he applies 2 random debuffs to the enemy. Both of his forms ignores immunity and cannot be dispelled. Sounds pretty interesting, yeah? You may think that his mage class is the way to go because of that extra skill range, but that won't matter, since he does have a 1C skill that changes his form, so you're not always locked on onto that one form. With that being said, I recommend putting him in his holy class since you have a lot more benefit. The armor and headwear, you want HP, int, and defense. But in regular content, you can do magic defense instead of defense for the helmet. Then for the weapon and accessory, HP, int, and skill. But you can do defense instead of skill for the bulk. Then with the arena stones, I recommend giving him a defensive set, but if you don't care about that, then an offensive set will be fine. But I would lean more towards to a defensive set, since his options are very weak. The soldiers that he has are not bad. Crystal Warlock would be the best if you know you're up against assassins, but be aware that you're gonna have a hard time killing things. And they are gonna be his more defensive type of soldier, alongside the Guardian Infantry. Now your hardest hitting soldier will be the Gallant Duelist. They even have physical resistance as well. The deck gunners are going to be good against like flyers and on certain maps with lots of terrain for the defense ignore. Even zealots are good secondary options up against something like cavalry enemies in situation where you maybe don't even want to use the Gallant Duelist. I would even say sorcerers too, but they can be inconsistent. They want to be at max HP if you want the most damage out of them. However, they are his only best magic soldiers. For the best weapon that he can use is Gift of Eternal Life. You guys know what it does, gives some extra healing so it's very viable. Then Red Moon for the bulk, and I wish I could say the Scepter on him. Well, maybe not wish. I don't think it's too bad. That extra range is always really nice to have. It's just gonna be hard for Roland to be aggressive than you may think. So if you ever see Roland, you may only ever see him be played very slowly. So I would say that other people may even recommend the other two that I mentioned more. The armor that you want is the Forbidden Battle Armor, Aeolus, or Tiamat. I have seen new Reaper's clothes. I used to recommend this quite a bit back then, but stopped because it's mostly only good against assassins, since this thing does reduce crit chance. If you're scared of them, I would recommend something like the Aeolus since it covers all single target range options. But if you don't got anything else better, that armor will be fine. For the helmet, you can do tier for more damage. Some support options are Tenyos and Electric Headwear. If you're looking for survivability, then Glory or Aeneas are also fine. With the accessory, his best options are kinda strict, I would say. For PvP, if you want more bulk, I say it's Swordsmith or Overlord's Badge. Dropnir is great to counter enemies like assassins, so even Star Earring is fine for the survivability. In regular content, you would be better off using something like the Dimensional Jewel. The best enchant you want to go with is Breeze. Full Moon is also fine for a flexible playstyle since he can be played pretty slow and kinda aggressive. Alright, cool. So now that you guys know how to build Roland, let's get right on into his first awakening stage if you are having a hard time dealing with it. Alright, so in this one, you're gonna be up against Clotaire, Diehard, and Thxs. Why they have Thxs last? I have no idea. So the skills that you want to run is obviously his 1C. It's just a good act again skill for the approach. His unique 2C, it can switch from being single target and AoE at the same time, so that's going to be pretty useful. And then for the other 2C, I would really recommend Discipline since you are getting that heal. Now the best soldiers that you can use is the Zealots. Deck Gunners are going to be really amazing because you can stand on the defensive tile and do lots of damage at the same time. But the positioning is going to be a bit awkward though. Just make sure you switch to the Mage class and you'll have that insane range. If you're going to be using Deck Gunners, then I would recommend bringing Discipline. Crystal Warlock are not bad. They're pretty tanky and have reflect damage against physical damage, but they're not going to hit hard. And I guess Sorceress is fine, but put him in his Mage class because Roland in his Holy has him attack from one block. Alright, so the deal with Clotaire. Clotaire does have an act again skill, only one though. This act again skill lets him move 2 blocks, and he does have an AoE. It's a straight line AoE that reaches 5 blocks long, and nothing worse about it is that he can deal fixed damage afterwards. So Clotaire is going to be the real threat. If you're far away from him, he will AoE. But if you challenge him, there's a chance that he may single target you. So if you can't one-shot him, then the best thing that you can do is take out his soldier. And if he uses his single target skill, it's going to be only Clotaire attacking you. Because with it, Clotaire can attack with his soldier at the same time. So if you know that you can't survive against his AoE, then just attack him straight on. Because there's no way that Clotaire is going to be one-shotting you by himself, unless your Roland stats are very weak. I wish I could recommend being on the defensive tile, but that fixed damage will mess you up. So I'm just going to go ahead and attack Clotaire straight on. And then there we go. Okay, so let's say that I want to put Roland on the defensive tile. And what Clotaire is going to do is he acts again and then AoEs. Doesn't do a lot, but that fixed damage does even more. And that's not even the worst of it. The debuffs that he can apply will also screw you over. After taking action, you take fixed damage, and at the same time, Clotaire can do more damage against you. So yeah, playing it very safe against Clotaire is something I would really not recommend. So yeah, reset it, because I would just really recommend just attack Clotaire straight on. Now to deal with Diehard, it's going to be very hard to do any kind of chip damage against him with AoEs, because he has very good mobility. Like, I would argue that make sure to have Roland in his holy class for the defense increase, or you can put him in his mage class to apply some good debuffs on him like damage dealt reduction and attack down so that he does little damage against you. So by attacking Clotaire straight on, I can't escape from Diehard, like no matter what. So the only way to stay out of Diehard's reach is by at the beginning with Roland, but that leaves you with another problem. Literally on the next turn, you can't do anything after that. So you are forced to go against Diehard. So if you've been following along with me, you'll notice that on the left right here, for Roland right there, 30% defense increase from the city wall. I can't AoE Diehard, and that's where his other single target skill comes into play. I can't do anything to Diehard with Roland's unique skill, because it changed into an AoE instead of a single target skill. But since I had Roland bring another single target skill, that extra range from changing his form, from using his act again, comes into play. So attack Diehard, get the defense ignored from the dead gunner, and kill him. Tiara shouldn't be that bad. It would be even worse if she had attacking soldiers because she has attack blessing. Even with her AoE, it's totally not all that awful. But still, I would wait until her attack blessing wears off before you attack her. And do not underestimate the bolt rangers because they have some serious damage mitigation on them. But since I'm pretty confident, I'm just gonna go ahead and attack Tiaras and hopefully get the kill. So yeah, with this stage, they really force you to take the initiative because Clotaire is someone that you do not want to get AoE'd. Diehard is hard to stay away from, and the last enemy that you have to face after going through all of that is Thxs. Like seriously, Thxs as your last opponent? Like who came up with that? Now here we have it, his 3C. Similar to his 2C, the skill changes depending on his form, and when switching between them, the skill cooldown does reset. When he has Edge of Insight, it's a single target that dispels 3 buffs before battle and soldiers can attack with them. He attacks first if the enemy has 2 more debuffs, and then after defeating an enemy, he gets a buff that lets him deal fixed damage one time, that lasts for 2 turns. When he has Chastising Light, it's an AoE that applies 1 random powerful debuff for 2 turns, and if this skill hits 3 more enemies, he gets a buff that lets him deal 20% more damage for 2 turns. Honestly, it's alright. Still doesn't make up for the way how his gameplay is like, and I honestly still don't even know if I'm even ready for that. Because I know even by unlocking his 3C, my opinion on him is still gonna be the same thing. Alright, for this one, I don't think it's that bad. Just like always with these kind of videos, you do get 3 other characters that you can use, and they're enough to get you by. Like most of the time, you don't even really need to rely on your own character. So yeah, these stuff are always more easier compared to the first Awakening stage. So yeah, with that being said, let's jump right into his showcase. Alright, so if you want to understand Roland, his int increases, and after using a skill and taking action, he recovers a certain amount of HP. At the start of the battle, he gains a different form depending on his class type. So if his class type is Holy, he gets Edge of Insight that adds 10% of his int to his defense, and when initiating battle, before battle, he dispels 2 enemy buffs. If his class type is Mage, he gets Chastising Light. When using a skill, his range increases by 2. After actively attacking and dealing damage, he applies 2 random debuffs to the enemy. Both of his forms ignore its immunity and cannot be dispelled. So right now, My Roland is in his Holy class, so he automatically starts with Edge of Insight. And then we're gonna do his 1C and his talent together. So his 1C has a 2-turn cooldown. When he uses it, he switches to another form and gets a 20% increase to his attack and int with 2 turns. If Precia is on the field, the turn lasts for 4 turns instead, and is also applied to her. And then he can move 2 blocks to attack. So when I use this, it doesn't change his exactly class type. It does change the way how he looks, which I'm glad that he doesn't change his class type. I would rather just have him change form. But yeah, you can see, Chastising Light. So his range increases, and then when he attacks, it even applies to his AoE, so he does apply 2 additional debuffs. It's a really great way to switch his trigger and change the way how he entirely plays. A really good skill overall. With his unique 2C, it does change depending on his form. So right now he does have Edge of Insight, so it's a single target skill. It does fixed damage before battle, and when equipped with melee soldiers, they can also attack. I mean, it's a generic skill, nothing too crazy about it. Nice way to break stuff like Shrine Maiden and Last Rites. But so when I act again him, he now has Chastising Light, and by switching his form, rather than his 2C becoming a single target skill, it is now an AoE skill. It's a straight line that reaches 6 blocks long, that does a teleport effect that swaps enemy's position. Before using this, he dispels 2 debuffs on himself and gets immunity to attack and defense down, and immunity to silence for 2 turns. Alright, so after messing around, Roland does have 2 debuffs, and if we check the skill, it reaches 6 blocks long, and by using it, thanks to his talent, he can apply 2 additional debuffs even while using AoE. If we check Roland, his debuff got dispelled, and he got the buff. So yeah, that teleport effect will be quite disruptive. You can really mess up the opponent's position, but since it is a straight line skill, it is very easy to get away from. And now finally onto his 3C. It does change depending on his form, so right now he does have Edge of Insight. So what it does, it's a single target that dispels 3 buffs from the enemy, but you're actually dispelling 5 buffs in total because of Edge of Insight. Melee soldiers can attack with you, and you attack first if the enemy has 2 or more debuffs. After defeating the enemy, you get a buff that lets you deal fixed damage for 2 turns, and is not affected by a melee penalty. So I'm going to be attacking Gizrov. He does have 2 debuffs, and so by using it to 3C, he should be able to attack first. There you go. Gizrov didn't try to do anything because he knew he's gonna die. We check Roland. He gets a unique buff. It's a unique buff. After actively dealing damage to an enemy, he deals fixed damage. So now if we change his form into Chastising Light, as you would guess, his 3C becomes an AoE. It reaches 3 blocks long. It applies 1 powerful random debuff for 2 turns. If this skill does hit 3 more enemies, he gets a buff that lets him deal 20% more damage for 2 turns. So if we go ahead and check out the skill, thanks to his talent, that range extends to 2. So instead of reaching 3 blocks long, it reaches 5 blocks long. Pretty crazy, right? But when you actually go to select the enemy, look at that range. So go ahead and check out what the skill does, or how it looks. Pretty cool. I like how fast the animation was. Looks like he does have 2 animations with his 3C. Some attention to detail right there. So yeah, if you go ahead and check out the enemy, you can see some powerful debuffs like passive disabled, also got heal block, and this construct also has passive disabled, and 2 more additional debuffs which are weakening debuffs because of his talent. And if you go ahead and check out Roland, the buff that he gets is unique. So like with Precia, you can stack another damage dealt increase buff as well. And something else I want to show you with his AoEs is that if you have his buff from his single target skill that lets you deal fixed damage, if you act again and still have it and then use an AoE, that fixed damage will apply. Although I'm not really too sure how often you'll get that because it only lasts for 2 turns, and when you act again, the buffs on him does go down. But yeah, it's just something cool to know about. Oh yeah, and don't forget that whenever he changes form, his skill cooldown does reset. So right now his 3C is on a 2-turn cooldown, and then by using his act again skill, his 3C should come back but as an entirely different skill. So how do I really feel about Roland? Well, like I've always been saying, his overall performance is kinda dissatisfying. He's a very solid character at least, so that makes him usable, but with the way how his mechanic works and some of the few things on him, like his talent for example, My issue with it is that I hate that when he gets Chastising Light, his skill changes into an AoE. And the worst of it all is that when in that form, he gets more skill range, which doesn't sound awful, but when you really think about it, you can hardly ever make use of it because he mostly has weak passives, weak AoE skills, and only has one alternative skill option that is very good, which is a single target skill. Even with him having flexible attack style, his skill options are just very weak and forced upon. I just hate that so much about him as a character, because you read his talent and see that skill range and just like, oh cool, just like all other mage, that is very good. But nah, when you're in that form to get that range, it's really only applied to his AoE if you bring his unique skills. At least Edge of Insight is not bad for tanking this, and he does have self heals when using his skills. At least his At the Again skill can be used consistently. His factions aren't bad, so you can pair him with Landius, but that's about it. I wish I had more good things to say about him. Like the skills that he has aren't like doing anything too crazy unless you maybe bring like discipline on him for like extra healing. The AoE on his 2C is really disruptive, which I really like, but it can be easily avoided if the enemies know how to position right. So mostly part of that reason is just due to his form changes. There you guys have it. That was Roland's showcase. Despite his negatives being somewhat having more of an effect on him, if you can really get an understanding on his two different forms, you'll get better with his gameplay because that's how it will be. He can be played in two different ways, but if you really know what you're doing with Roland, then it's not all that bad. With that being said, his options are pretty weak, and I would say that he's a high maintenance character. That's not really worth to go for, as some characters far excels him, but if you do end up getting him, he can put up work. Like Roland is a solid character, he's just gonna have you thinking all the time. Just save your time and resources for the next few upcoming months. Trust me that you want to do that because those characters that we are getting are insanely good. But that's all I really have for you guys. If you all enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and feel free to let me know down in the comments how you guys feel about Roland and if there was anything that I may have missed. So yeah, thanks for watching. Your fellow Z.